Alright, welcome back to the Ram Revival Sunday Fun Day here in the shop, and it is a hot one. It's about 5:20 at about 90 degrees. If you hear a hum or a buzz in the background, that's a fan. Sorry, not sorry. Like I said, it is hot. Updates for you. I moved the truck forward so I can lower kind of a screen door that covers the garage. It's a really cool deal. But it gets hot here. It's shaded. It's screened. It keeps the bugs out, which they're terrible right now, so that's appreciated as well. Getting the breeze in is good for me. The ballast smell is still a little funky. And I've got a rug out by the box fan, by the screen, that I'm trying to dry out so I can eliminate that smell, or just know to throw it away. But on the shop floor, the stain is there. I've tried to clean it, but the smell, not as obnoxious. When people that aren't me walk in, they're like, what's that smell? But when I walk in and I used to smell it, I'd be like, oh, it's getting better, so that's good. The other thing that is good is we're ready to make progress. I got slowed down because we were waiting on parts. Typically Summit, if I order something and it ships that day, I have it the next day. That's just UPS ground, from the Arlington facility to this area. It's not any special rush shipments or I'm a cool customer type of a thing. It's just that's UPS ground is 1 day transit. So 2 days I figured would be the worst. I ordered parts Monday, thought I'd have them Wednesday. I got them Friday. That kind of screwed us around. But one of the items was an engine stand that I would like to use for this to get it to the machine shop, but I had to use it on a 440, which if I take you back over my stoop over that way somewhere, there is an engine. It's a 440 and it's sitting on the cheap engine stand now. And I had to do that in order to A, test the stand, but B, to get the 440 out of the way of the cherry picker that it was attached to, not hoisted by any means, but just connected to in case it were to tip or something. And it's held up. If it can hold a 440, it can hold a 5.2 Magnum. That's my logic anyway. So since that's just cheap, they're like 67 bucks, I might get another one. We'll have a standalone video on that, I am sure. But the other thing I needed is right here. And when I first recorded this, before I accidentally deleted it, I had the part number. I think it was 13290. I'll try to remember to link it for you. But where we got hung up on it was the distributor and the oil pressure sensor. That's what that little tower is back there, a sending unit, if you will. And the size is 1 1/16 down there at the hex. The pliers wrench here on the cowl, we're supposed to take it off. I could tell they were going to round it. That thing shouldn't be in there tight. It's probably not, but that was going to round the sensor off. If you recall, I told you what I can reuse, I would like to reuse, and there's also no point in breaking it regardless. So I picked this up. I believe it's Lisle. Again, it looks like Lisle to me, L-I-S-L-E. I think it's part 13290. This thing runs like $9.99, $10.99, somewhere in that range. And the way it's set up, it's 1 1/16 right there on the business end. And then up top, the drive size is only 3/8. You would think a socket that large would have a 1/2 inch drive size. Not the case here, again, probably because it's designed for sensors and you don't need that kind of leverage with a sensor. The other thing to note is that hex profile at the top. You're probably thinking, what the heck is that for? If this is a socket, you don't need that. Well, this is designed for a 1 1/8 wrench. Now, a lot of people probably aren't going to have wrenches up to that size. Maybe 1 inch, typically 3/4, sometimes 7/8. But the average guy is probably going to stop at 3/4. So what you would do in that case is use an adjustable wrench or something like the pliers wrench to grab this that you will not strip out or round off the corners of, and then go to town. So that's if you have tight tolerances there. The other thing you're thinking, oh, just should have bought a socket. Well, it actually would have cost more than this. The other thing, this is a little taller and it's got a much thinner sidewall, and the reason for that is because they are prepping it for the back end, the sensor side of things, the electronics. So our plan is to use this, break the sensor free, get the distributor lifted up. That will give me an open valley, if you will, and that's going to allow me maximum space to reach the bolts running from the transmission to the engine block and go to town there. Now, sort of the wild card is still, how are we going to get this out? And the issues I've got, if I get the distributor gone and the oil pressure sending unit out of there, we eliminate the chance to damage those. Our high point then becomes the PCV valves on the valve covers. I can take those off. I can take the fill cap off if I had to. Valve covers would kind of be our top point, the point of first contact, if you will. And the problem is I'm sitting right here on the core support still. We've also got the hood on. I'm thinking with the manifold off and all the accessories removed, I'm wondering if I can get the cherry picker in here and snake it out. I don't know. I mean, we've got quite a bit of leeway here that we can swing it forward. And then if I could just come up vertically, we would have to kind of like clear the insulation pad and then just back it on out is what I'm hoping happens. If that does not work, I will probably pull the core support again. For me, as a one-man show, the hood, probably fairly heavy, but mainly it's just awkward. It's a huge hood, and as one person, there's a lot of bad things that can happen, whether you crack a windshield, whether you have the hood slide and drop or get dented back on the corners, if it hits a fender, the door. The core support is just easier for a one-man operation. If you got a buddy or if it's in a shop, yeah, the hood's probably going to come off. But in the core support, I still have the transcooler and the condenser. Transcooler, non-issue. Everything's disconnected from it regardless. It is kind of mounted funky, and it looks like they want you to pull the condenser first, which I would probably do in reverse order somehow. But the condenser is what I don't want to screw up. I don't want to drain. I don't have the equipment to evacuate it. That's why we've got that sitting over there awkwardly. I'm trying to keep that intact, okay, and sealed. I don't also want to pay someone to have to refill the air conditioner when I, shouldn't have had to. So that would be the last resort, and I simply just kind of freewheeling this like we are. I don't know what the best course of action is going to be. You look online on old forum posts and videos and stuff, and you don't really find what you're looking for. And subsequently, we're just kind of winging it. So if we can get this out and leaving the hood and the core support in place, awesome. That's what we're going to do. But I do, just for the sake of getting it out, or maybe even just the oil pressure cylinder, if we could just get that out so I have a little bit of an alley at the back of the valley, if you follow my drift, we could better access those bolts. Once you get them broke free, you can just kind of spin them out by hand most of the time. So that's the good news. But that's where we're at. That's kind of the situation we're facing. Again, my apologies that I deleted this clip that I've already recorded, because the tag, I pitched it off. I was real cool. I got it out with one hand, which was amazing, and it fell somewhere down there and hit the floor. So my apologies on that front. Again, I'm not quite sure where the previous part left off, but since I had to wait for tools, it just made sense to go ahead and put it here. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm planning on anyway. I'm going to get to work, again, because it's stupid hot in this place. And hopefully we can make some good progress and get to kind of taking out. There's only probably like 5 or 6 bolts left. So we're very close. We just have to kind of take our time, do things the smartest way, and then hope that that turns out to actually be the smartest way to do it. So let's get to work and see what happens. All right, so here's our special sensor socket we waited like 5 days to get. Check it out. Tucks down, slips on, not damaging the connection point, the electronics. We were home free. In fact, probably it could spin that by hand if the dipstick wasn't digging into me. So I'm going to go ahead and let the stop Villa go to work here, and we'll have this thing out of our way. All right, so busted knuckle express here. Apparently I just wasn't lifting up hard enough. And, it's not something you want to force when you're dealing with stuff like this, And sure enough, you took the cap off, which turned out to be pointless, and then just lift it up again, and knuckle went flying into the top of the firewall near that clamp and the heater hose. So hey, the main thing though is it's off, and I'm not even bleeding that bad, so that's a win. But now we've got our galley open, and that was the main thing I wanted to do. Again, the socket worked great. Still got the sensor in it for safe protection until I crawl out of here. Then we'll store it away properly. But we got everything opened up. That gives me nice, about as good of an access point as you could hope for the rest of these bolts. So I'm going to figure out how we want to tackle that, and I will check back. All right, so a bit of an update for you, because again, it's been a bit of a hiatus since we had to wait on some parts. Crawled back under the truck. The top 2 from the transmission to the engine block, we've gotten those out. I honestly think, after looking at it, my best point of access for bolts 3 and 4 would be from underneath the vehicle, from behind the transmission. Then of course our 5th and 6th bolts that still remain would kind of be from the engine to the transmission at the very bottom. We just kind of left those. They're what the braces bolted to, if you recall. And subsequently, we're getting to the point where we're kind of dancing around with potential failure. All right, we could have a bolt come out, and we could have an engine or a transmission that's kind of not too thrilled about it. So I want to go ahead and take some precautions. I freed up my cherry picker, as mentioned, with that stand for the 440. So what I've got here is just some grade 8 hardware. Now, where I'm planning to pick up, I'm going to utilize that guy right there in my load leveler, and it'll be his first duty cycle, so I hope he can handle the 318. But right here at the front of the cylinder head, you've got basically 3 different ports. Again, your front accessory brackets kind of run in there, technically 4, but you know, the dipstick once again in the way. So either probably here, I think you can see that now, or here. I'm going to take these brackets, which you can kind of see they've got, so it's kind of a 90-degree set. You can see there's the big hole there, and then a 90-degree bend, and there's also a hole in that. So I could potentially use the flat side here, and that's kind of what I'll be investigating off camera. But again, replicated here on the passenger side, and then where we've removed some bolts from the back of the heads, we have similar provisions. So I ordered up some 3/8 grade 8 hardware because, again, I value my life. I hope you value yours. Don't get cheap bolts for this stuff, because that's kind of going to be your lifting point, right? That would be your point of failure. This is surprisingly not as heavy as you would think it would be, a fully dressed engine, but nonetheless, I wasn't quite sure, because these brackets are actually fairly thick, if you can kind of get another look at them there. A little thicker than you would think Harbor Freight products would be, so kudos to them. I would suggest you run a flat, just because the bolt head is always going to be off a little bit in comparison to what they've got punched over there. But run a flat washer, possibly a lock. What I did is I ordered 3/8 16 by 1 inch, which I think will work. And I also popped for 4 1/4 bolts. My logic there is if I didn't quite have enough threads, if I wasn't comfortable, say we just had minimalistic turns into the cylinder head, I can then switch out and go to the 1 1/4, and we add a 1/4 inch of threads to what we would be putting in place to the cylinder head to maintain the lift, the entire weight of the motor. So my logic is get this load leveler set up, slide my cherry picker over, hook it up, not necessarily lift it, but you know, kind of get it to where it's going to be just about taut, and that'll just add a little bit. All we really have in the engine bay, which you can't really see, but down there underneath that heat shield, those are our 2 motor mount bolts. If you recall, they're flipped. You know, we have the thread running front to back on one, back to front on the other, which I think, again, we can probably tackle that from the underside, especially when we're confident knowing that if it does drop down, we have it suspended by the cherry picker. So it's going to get kind of cramped with the arm and the legs of the cherry picker, but that's sort of what I'm thinking right now. Again, that's sort of why we did the top-down approach, and I'm thinking that's what we're going to try. So like I said, I would walk you through this if I had a film crew, but I only have 2 arms, and it's pretty straightforward. I will make sure to show you the finished product, and then, of course, if it works, you can copy it. If it doesn't work, well, you'll figure that out, and we'll find something that does. So stay tuned, and I will catch you back here in just a second. All right, so she is loosely set up. Again, not quite tight yet. Still got to come in and tighten everything up. But out here, I elected to go not on the inboard, but the outboard, essentially the farthest top point, if you will, the corner of the head, if you want to call it that way. Reason for that is mainly just the dipstick was in the way, and this is much easier for me to turn a wrench. Since I did that over here, I did the same thing on this side. Keep in mind, when you lift this engine out, even though all of this is disconnected, if it's sitting above it, you have pinch points. You could have this bracket slip a little bit. It could catch this harness. It could then lift up on it. Be mindful of that. Back there wasn't really an issue. Got kind of, again, to the top corner. That Astro light, man, it was really great at the start of all this and early on in this life, but it dims quite a bit now when it's not like fully charged, which is unfortunate. But where I ran into some issues, I just simply dismantled the connection here on the load leveler so I could have, you know, more play. What this is not just a, you know, braided loom over harness. It's real nice. That is our main fuel line. You can kind of see the safety catch dangling right there. And this is something I'm afraid, again, these bend at 90 degrees. You can kind of see the shiny point where my index finger is holding in circles. When I lift up, I'm going to want to, as soon as possible, kind of slide forward to not catch that, or at least be mindful of it. It shouldn't be too bad, but it's just really secured down there. I think it's like in some cable tie plastic wire clump thing the factory had going on. So that's where we stand there. But this, I just basically need to come in again 3/8/16 in all of these holes, so that makes your life very simple. I did wind up using the 1-inch. Case in point, way up here, I've got my 1.25 inch, and with those, we've got them. Next project, if we need them, if we ever modify the legs or something, make it super thick or double walled, whatever we decide to do. Ultimately, though, you just need to take a 9/16 wrench or socket. Ratcheting wrench might be nice here, you know, for tight quarters, like with the dipstick. Can't wait to get that thing out of here. But once you do that, you just tighten her down, make sure you're good on that front. We will slide the cherry picker over. We will hook on right here at this point, and then I'll just kind of start to slowly lift until we take some slack out of this, and then I'm going to go down under the truck. I've got the transmission jack ready to go. Haven't, you know, boarded it up and threaded it into place, if you will, lifted it. But I also might run a cable strap or a ratchet tie down, whatever you want to call them, underneath the very front edge, sort of where the torque converter would sit of the transmission. Not sure that it's going to work. It's sort of where the Y pipe is the best way, I guess, to describe that. So if I do that and I get it to work, I will show you what we did, and it probably wouldn't hold the weight of a transmission, but it could potentially work in conjunction with other things to keep it from falling or getting too far out of line. So it also could be useful on reinstallation of the new motor. As we kind of ratchet up, maybe you can manipulate the transmission up, like if your bolt hole is just, you know, off like a 1/16 or, you know, 1/8 of an inch, you can ratchet up to bring it up. You can loosen the tension to drop it down. It's kind of like having a third hand for those of us that work solo. So this is in place. I'm going to get it secured, move the cherry picker, get under the truck, and get back at it. Alright, so progress/problem point for you. The 440, which was always just nestled between the cherry picker because I didn't have a stand for it, is now on a stand. It's ridiculously tall, though. It looks even bigger than it is because they hold it by the oil pan rail. It's just gravity kind of keep it in place. Would have a strap down, but the straps were, of course, too short for a big block Chrysler. So we got to clean that up. Got some goo gone on it right now. There's the 318 on the stand, and you're thinking, hey, look at you. Got this thing ready to come out, huh? Well, let me show you this right here. This is the grill guard, right? And that is the ram for the cylinder. And I can't go forward anymore with the grill guard. Now, we've got, you know, like what, maybe 3.5, 4 inches we could gain if I were to pull the grill guard. I could do that. I'm sure that's a lot of fun by yourself. Also, reinstalling it would probably be even more difficult, but condenser still in place, core support and transcooler on the inside still in place. The ram is extended all the way out. Typically, I like to overkill stuff. You know, this engine probably isn't, but you know what, 3-ish, 400 maybe, if that. I don't even know if it would be to that point. But anyway, a couple hundred, you know, definitely less than 500, but I would prefer to lift that on 1,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a 2-ton engine hoist, lift it on 1,000. The problem is with the cab forward design and then all this real estate, keep in mind, I mean, all that space is there because that's where the fan shroud and the fan and the radiator, which is a fraction of that entire area, sits. If we didn't have the grill guard, I think it would have lined up okay. Now, luckily, I have the load leveler, and now the load leveler went from being a 50-50 split as I had it installed to like a 70-30 maybe. And what that means is you can see that chain right there, and it's got an angle. You know, we want it to be straight up and down, essentially making, you know, a 90 degree with the floor perpendicular. It's cantered right now, and when we free this engine from the transmission, from the mounts, that's going to swing. It's going to swing wildly because you've got wheels on the engine hoist. I'm by myself. I'm a one-man show, and I can't be underneath freeing the final bolt, holding an engine hoist in place, and catching the block before it swings back into the transcooler. So something bad will happen unless I magically learn how to get 2 more hands or have somebody show up and say, hey, you pulling an engine? I always wanted to see how that works. Let me help. And then they can man, you know, I'd probably have them at the cherry picker, maybe like, hey, you know, stick this block of wood here in front of this. And that may be what I do, is put plywood in front of the transcooler. I don't really know. And there's still the chance that we have to pull it. So I'm gonna go think about this, turn on the oven, throw supper in. It's one of those long chicken enchilada things, like three-step process, right? And I can tell you though, right here I've got a wrench, if you can see it, this black Husky, so it's not helping any. 3/4 head on the bolt. The back side I've got a 13/16 socket on the nuts. So passenger side, you've got the bolt towards the radiator and the nut towards the firewall. On the driver side, it's flipped. Should be the same hardware. But we have all this dead space, and that is now a problem. So I don't know, I've done some crazy things before. You know, if this was a salvage yard, you know, you wouldn't care. It's like, oh, busted that radiator up pretty good. You know, it's like, you know, doesn't matter. With this being your personal vehicle and one that you plan to put back together and drive ASAP, time is of the essence here. This is not a good position to find oneself. So I don't know, I've never seen, you know, a like roll along engine hoist that would be the extra length I would need. I mean, it would have to have an insane arm and just be overbuilt to the moon. I could possibly like cut down some square tubing and rig something up, you know, kind of like telescoping effect. You know, like if that's 3.5-inch square tubing, I could maybe then, if the black is like 3-inch, I could maybe like run from there and have, you know, 2.5 and 2-inch and then weld it for my extension. I don't really know. I just know that this swings. If you ever see this in a situation and you're going to be lifting something on your own, that's gonna swing. You want it to be straight up and down, and we don't have that here. So in fact, if I didn't have the load leveler, I couldn't have even gotten to a pickup point. Like if this was a traditional, you know, small block, we had a cast iron intake, we're gonna pick it up from the carb pad or something, I couldn't get this engine hoist to do that without modifying it or getting something different. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna try to figure it out, but this is what you run into. And again, certainly nothing I've seen online said, oh hey, by the way, you know, with my drill guard, I couldn't even get to the manifold to pick it up. So we are blazing our, I'm sure someone's done it, they just haven't, you know, bothered to post it or, you know, take pictures or video it. So we're making headway here. Does the grill guard have to come off? Maybe. Does the core support and the transcooler and the condenser have to go? Possibly. But I simply don't know right now. So I'm gonna go get the oven on for supper and think about this. We'll be back, see what we can figure out. All right, so here's actually kind of a better angle for you. I mean, you really can appreciate the swing we're about to have with this thing. So I set the camera on the fuse box cover so it's always in the engine bay, that way if I crawl in I don't forget it. But man, that's unfortunate. So I'll figure something out, we will take it from there. Also, only one side, I've never understood this. You would think they would take the time to print 2 stickers and put them on the flip side, but apparently people only stand on the right side of an engine hoist, so I probably need to scribble that out, but put it on the other side, you know. Anyway, I've got to figure something creative out. I'll catch you back here in just a little bit.